Hi, and welcome to the Leader's Edge, our weekly live interview show where Georgia Donaldson and I, Emily Chiwa, feature successful CEOs and professionals who are so kind to share their stories with us. We want to bring you awareness, inspiration, and leadership tips for you to action to help you sharpen your competitive advantage and make a positive impact in your organization and community. Remember, if you are watching us live, you can leave a comment on LinkedIn if you want to ask a question for us to address on the show. So today's topic is wellness through flexibility. And I'm sure probably some of you are thinking, what? Wellness through flexibility. So before we bring our wonderful guest, Alana Beaubrun, who Georgia will properly introduce in a second, I want you to consider and bring to your awareness your own response to a couple of questions. The first being, are there practices that you have adopted to support your well being or wellness at work? And the second question is, are there things you are tolerating at work that are not supporting your well being? So while you ponder on those, I'll invite Georgia to introduce Alana and let her lead off the discussion with a story of how she got to wellness through flexibility. Georgia, good
Thank,
morning.
thank you. It's another Monday morning, and we are here again. And Emily, you started out with two wonderful questions, and that helps us to lead into our guest. Listen to a few things, Emily. 30 years senior HR experience, master's in HR, BSc in sociology and management, certified member of CIPD for 20 years. Guess what? That's part of the package called Alana Beaubrun. Former executive at Angostura and Nestle, and a former director of Angostura. That's another part of that package. And she is a director of global HR at Methanex Corporation. And guess what? It's on a part time and flexible basis. We're talking about flexibility today. She is a founder of Harmony HR Consultancy Limited, and her peers have recognized her because she got the Maxine Barnett Award for HR Excellence by the Human Resource Management Association of Trinidad and Tobago. And that was the inaugural one. Yes. So she was the
Wow.
first person who got it. But this package not only talks about business and education, she volunteers because she's a volunteer at the Shelter for Battered Women. And she's an
Mhm.
active speaker at conferences. Alana is a gift that just keeps on giving. Alana, welcome to the Leader's Edge. You are
Good
going to be
Welcome.
morning,
talking to
ladies.
us this morning about how you do all of those things in that little package called Alana. Share your story, Alana. How do you get all that done?
Oh my God. Good morning, ladies. And thank you for having me on this morning. Really enjoy your company. Yeah, when you say it like that, it kind of does sound like a lot. But I honestly, I enjoy everything that I do. And I think that enjoyment allows me to do that. And then, of course, there's other personal stuff too. I'm a mom to a 19-year-old son, and, of course, and a pug mom as well. Emily knows that. So there
Yes.
are other personal sides of my life too. But I enjoy what I do. Absolutely. I've always enjoyed HR. I have a passion for learning and for developing others. So I think it sort of makes the job light.
Ah, okay, good. But you had a particular conversation that led to the flexibility that you now have. Talk to us about that conversation. What went through your mind, the kind of courage that it took to have that conversation, and how you think other people can have those similar conversations if they need to.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think the trigger was during COVID, and a lot of us had epiphanies during COVID. So
Mhm.
I know I'm not the only one. And during COVID, a couple of things happened. COVID in itself. And then I thought, look, I've been working like this almost 30 years at that point. I enjoy what I do, but can I get off the treadmill or at least design a new treadmill in a way? I'd like to work differently. I'd like to continue doing what I love, but there must be another model to this. Also, another big trigger, I had a health scare. So for about, I would say a week and a half, I didn't know whether I had cancer or not. And that caused me to think around, if I don't, then do I still want to work the way I do? And if I do have it, I can't. So something needs to change. So I made a decision at that point to have a conversation with my employer about flexibility. And it went something like this. I said, hey, I'd like to work differently. I don't know what that looks like, but let's talk about finding a solution to this. And they were very supportive and were able to design something for me that I still do to this day in that flexible space. So I moved from a permanent full-time employee to a part-time employee, and my hours are flexible. So that helped. And it was tremendous support. Now, I have to say to a lot of folks, it doesn't work in every organization. It may
Yes.
not work with every job. And there are prerequisites to this. As employers ourselves, we know, you need to be performing, delivering. It needs to work. It needs to be practical. And in my
Yeah.
case, I had the support of my organization, and it was practical. And 3 years later, I'm still doing that.
Mm.
But so I think when you're approaching an organization for that, it's a risk. I knew it was a risk going in. My employer
Yes.
could have said, well, go and work differently somewhere else.
Mhm.
But
Yes.
I'm so grateful for that. But I knew that that was a risk. But the point is, it was a risk I was willing to take. Because I also thought after almost 30 years of my profession, I would be able to give back in another way. And I did
Mhm.
open my own business, as you mentioned, Harmony HR, 3 years ago. And
Yes.
now together, those work so well together. I have a lovely cadence. So
Ah.
it's some discipline though in the beginning to get that rhythm up and running.
Yeah.
And you need to be true with yourself, your employer, and your business in terms of making it work. But yeah, I think it's possible. I totally enjoyed it, and it gives me the flexibility that I need and I wanted. And it definitely works in my life.
So,
Okay.
Alana,
Go
yeah,
ahead, Emily.
I'm curious, right? So, I mean, do you think it was something that was coming, like coming up in you and the health scare that you experienced, which I'm glad it was just a scare, um, sort of pushed you over? Because I mean, yes, we all had the COVID awakenings, as you say, but a lot of us were more stressed out during COVID because working from home was so stressful because we
Hmm.
couldn't switch off, right? So the balance actually went the other
Hmm.
way instead of us getting more. In some ways we did, but in other ways we didn't. So I'm just curious, like, was it something that you were thinking about before and it sort of just came to the fore, or was it just like, okay, this happened and I'm like, it was like just an epiphany at the moment and I needed to.
Yeah.
Curious about
I
that.
actually think I actually think it was an epiphany because even my job at the time, I worked in Point Lisas. So I was doing a 2 hour commute every day, two
Yeah.
plus, depending on
Wow.
traffic.
Yeah.
And it never bothered me. And I did it. I worked there in the 90s for a bit, and then I came back 10 years, 9 years ago. So I did that commute daily. And even all my Porter friends would be like, girl, how are you doing that? I said, it actually, I don't think about it. I put on an audiobook, my call my mom. Make my commute productive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think, but from the time COVID hit, and I all of a sudden I had 2 hours of my day, and I said, well, what is going on here? And then I realized, no, I definitely need to work differently. Another thing is I have a community of friends, almost friends like family, and a lot of them, while a lot of them are corporate, a lot of them have their own businesses as well. So I had that example of successful professionals who are entrepreneurs and who have built that flexibility in their life as well. So that helped. I had a community of support.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so
Okay.
important. That's so important to build that community of support around you.
Yeah.
Emily,
Yes.
you and I were leadership coaches, and we've seen clients who have asked us, what do I do when I'm faced with the challenges of so many trying to maintain that harmony? You see where I'm going, Alana? And what would you say to them to get that harmony?
Yeah. I plan a lot. And I manage my calendar quite tightly. If it's not in my calendar, it doesn't exist for me at least. So, and I make sure that I have time for those big buckets. So, for example, every Sunday, and I did it yesterday, and I was reviewing it this morning. I plan because your schedule changes. I plan where my workouts are going to be. You know,
Mm.
where I'm walking in the botanical gardens with a friend, where I'm doing a savannah, where I'm doing a walk run, where I'm doing a Chancellor Hill. I plan that. So it kind of
Mm,
like I those big buckets, that big bucket needs to go into my calendar every week. And it changes. Every week looks different. So I make sure that that goes
Okay.
in. That creates a bit of harmony. Also, my flexibility allows me to have what I call softer mornings so that my mornings are productive for me. I meditate every morning. I do a bit of yoga. Sometimes I walk. So those things, I make sure that my mornings support me for my day. And it's doable. I mean, what, but then you're very disciplined once you get going. But then
Yes.
that's part of helping you to get going.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Be
So
That's
deliberate.
individual.
Yeah, I think what I would tell people is be deliberate about those efforts. Know what's
Mm-hmm.
important to you, and like schedule it in. Make sure it gets into your calendar, and be disciplined with it. And then you build a
yeah,
habit.
Right.
yeah. So I'm hearing a lot of health and wellness. So I was actually surprised when you said you plan the priorities and the first thing you start is when I'm walking with a friend or when I'm doing. I'm like, okay. A lot of people would think planning the priorities is okay. What are the things I have to get done at work, and then what else I could do around it? So it was interesting that you had a different way. I mean, you kind of like work is a given, which
Hmm.
we need,
It
which
is.
but yeah.
It,
And I think maybe is it that being part time and flexible has actually made you even more productive at work, like how you spend those hours. You're much more careful about how you spend them.
that is
Yeah.
absolutely correct because you're super focused. As I said, once you get into that zone, you're super focused on what you need to do and it's planned. And I like your point, Emily. Work is a given. So it's there. It's not that it doesn't, it's actually probably planned before before it's Sunday. And it's already in my calendar. So I make sure that my important, walking and workouts work around that. And folks come sometimes people say, "Well, you're semi-retired." I'm like, no, I actually work as much as I used to, but it's just on my terms.
Yeah.
It looks a little
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
So
I
now you
think.
spoke to the individual set your own schedule, but what would you say to the employers
Mhm.
who may have employees coming to
Yeah.
them asking for flexibility? Because it's not practical in all cases, but what would you say to those employers?
Correct, because of course I sit on that side as well as HR. I mean, I do, have that issue with folks coming to the organization for that. So one, the organization needs to know where they stand on it. And for some organizations, they're like, we're all about flexibility. And for some, they actually say, well, we can't. The type of our business, type of business we have, the culture we have, what we want to do, or where we are in our phase of business. They may be a startup, and so they need to be first clear on what that is, and that's fine, right? Because
Mhm.
now there's a choice. You have a choice as an employer where you want to sit on that continuum, but so do employees. So once
Mhm.
you know where you are and you say, okay, fine, we are open to it, then you need to set some criteria and have a policy. I'm getting all HR now, get a policy on it. And set some parameters. So performance must be a given. The type of role, there's some very practical hands-on roles. I mean, I work on the estate, so you have folks that need to be on the plant, and that
Yeah.
that goes without saying. So things like that. So there's some roles that can't physically do it, and then you
Mhm.
need to look at what are the needs of the organization, what are the needs of the employees as well. I remember I worked with someone who was a semi-professional athlete, and she wanted to make sure she trained every morning. So she came in at around 9:30 every morning, but then worked the hours until later. So can you accommodate that sort of arrangement? You remember, people want flexibility for different things. So as an employer, engage your employees, know the demographic you're working with, and see what kind of support they need. Some people need elder care, they need time for elder care. Some need time for kids, some need time for hobbies like sports. And it's lifestyle, like what are your employees' lifestyle? And see if you can support that. Because with the war for talent, and I'm speaking to employers now, with the war for talent, you need to make sure you get talent from all the talent pools possible. Not everybody these days wants or can work 8 to 4, 9 to 5 anymore. You do have people who have needs and preferences like myself, but bring a lot of talent, a lot of value to the workforce. So you need to also be able to access those people, and you engage with them in a different way. But I think for employers, first of all, think about and decide where you stand on that flexibility continuum.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, Alana, what you just said, that's the video clip right there, speaking to employers. Yes. Emily,
Yes, Georgia.
tell you. So when we're coming now down to the wrap, Alana, you spoke about your own need for flexibility. You spoke about
Mhm.
how you schedule your day. You spoke to the employers. What do you think you want people to leave with listen to this podcast?
Great question, Georgia. Thanks so much. I think what I want people to realize is that you have a choice. Regardless, you have a choice. And I think a lot of us think, oh gosh, I don't have a choice. I have a mortgage, I have kids, I have this, I'm a single mom, right? So you have a choice, and it's how you leverage your work, your connections, even how you put it to employer. How are you bringing value? So if you as a person want to do this, how are you bringing value to employer by doing this, and craft your request, in that way. But I think to employers as well, you also have a choice in terms of where you stand on this and how much and the kind of talent you want to attract to your organization. So I think let's not get caught into this one traditional way of working and doing things. We have options before us now that put more value on the table for employers and employees.
That's a
Yeah, love
beautiful,
that.
beautiful summary. Emily, over to you to
Yeah.
wrap.
Yes, yes. So, Alana, again, thank you so much for coming here with us, sharing your story this morning, and being open about what had brought you to this idea of having more wellness through flexibility. It's not necessarily that you weren't having a good well-being before, but it was possible that you could actually do more.
Yes.
And the idea for all of us, I think, is to take responsibility. So first we take personal responsibility for ourselves, do that little self-audit, check
Mm-hmm.
in, how am I spending my time? We all have this limited amount of time on this planet and every day. So how are you spending your time? Is it giving you what you need? As Alana said, there may be hobbies, there may be volunteer things you want to do, there may be, small business you want to start, whatever it
Yep.
is you want to do. Are you able to do those things the way your life is structured? And is it possible for your life to be structured differently to allow you to have more? Right. And that's all we're asking you from the self audit perspective. And for employers to think about um, flexibility, some of us, I think, quietly or not so quietly think it's a chore. It's like, oh
Mhm.
God, I don't want to have to do that. It's harder, probably. It is more challenging in some ways to manage, but it's not impossible. Lots of people have done it very well. So we can learn, and learning is something, we always talk about continuous learning, a very important aspect of your leadership mindset. So people, take Alana's story, and I hope you go with it, whatever you feel is relevant to you, and yeah, don't just listen but act. So thank you again, ladies. It's been a pleasure, a real pleasure this morning.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yes. All
Thank you,
right. And
Alana.
Alana, there's no way you could be
Thank
working
you.
for 30 years anywhere, even though you were.
Child labor. It's called child labor.
Y'all are too funny.
Okay,
Oh,
guys.
thank you, ladies. This is enjoyable. Take care.
Yeah. Have a great day. Bye.